Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to a moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next in the Discover Your Potential segment, brought to you by Keep the Past. Today we're joined by our regular contributor and co-host, Anna Devere, and she is joined by Ylanda Wilhite. She's a wealth management expert turned children's author. Ylanda served as part of the client strategy team with BMO Harris, where she provided customized investment management and advisory solutions for high net worth individuals, families, and organizations. She joined the organization in 1983, had over 40 years of experience in the financial services industry, and during her career as an investment professional, she managed an average of $850 million in investable assets. Woohoo! You go, girl. Since retiring in April of 2023, Ylanda is now pursuing her passion for financial literacy and has even written a children's book called My Savings Jar, which introduces young children to saving money and other basic financial concepts. They're going to join me today to chat all about the importance of financial literacy, early education, and how her book is at the core of it all. Welcoming now to the show are Ylanda and Anna. Welcome, superstars.
I love that shout out when you said 850 million, whatever that was. I couldn't agree more. Let's talk about the money. Love it.
Yeah, I want to.
Sometimes when I think about it.
She's a trailblazer. So let's dive right in, Ylanda. So money is often viewed as a touchy subject. In fact, according to research from financial planning leader Empower, 62% of people don't talk about money. And to go even further, 52% of Americans surveyed reported that they never talked about finances growing up, which is shocking to me. And 1 in 4 learned that it's not polite to talk about money. However, with this stigma around money talk, we're creating more pressing issues as kids grow up and lack major financial literacy skills, which is where you come in. Now, it's to my understanding that your book, My Savings Jar, counters this and introduces children to the basic concepts of setting goals, saving, and budgeting, which I love. It's right up my mom alley. I'd love to know more. What inspired you to write My Savings Jar, and what message do you hope to convey to children through this book?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. You brought up some great statistics. When I think about, like, even in my household growing up, it wasn't a discussion, and it wasn't that it was intentionally ignored. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of time parents are busy with their own lives, or depending on their financial situation, they may not have the knowledge to know to pass it down. So even though those numbers are staggering, they're true. They're very true. So after I retired, let me back up. I've met with people outside of my work that I've talked to, counseled, that were in financial trouble, that they thought they were in financial trouble. And I felt like financial illiteracy is such a huge issue in our country. How do we tackle that? And it's like, well, what if we start young? If we can start with the kids as early as possible, teaching them just the very basic of saving. And that's really all it is, no matter how old you are, no matter how much money you have. If we could start so early teaching that, instilling that, then going forward in the future, we can reduce the number of people. And I hate to say illiteracy, but we can increase the knowledge, financial knowledge of individuals.
I love it. I love everything you're saying. It fits exactly into my narrative. Now, this book is great. It's great. It's a great resource and such an engaging way to begin talking about money with your kids and teach them the true value of financial planning. And with only 57% of the adults in the US being considered financially literate, it's so important to start this kind of education young and create the safe space for discussing money. So I think what you're doing is amazing. Now, Anna, I know you have some questions, so I'll hand it off to you.
Well, I still want to come from this 50,000 foot view and ask you, how do you think your experience as a vice president and senior director of investments, how did that influence the themes and the lessons in My Savings Jar?
Well, over that time, just, most of the work that we did, it started through financial planning for everybody, every person, whether you call it that or not. You have goals, and how do you meet those goals? And financial planning helps lay out the blueprint to do that. How much do you have saved now? How much do you need to achieve those goals? How do you plan to save to get there? So with every mostly every client that we had, it started with financial planning. And then my role was to come in and say, okay, well, if you need 7% return to reach this long-term goal, then I come in and build a portfolio, depending on what's happening in the market and the economy, and make sure we can get that 7% over time. So just that whole process, and thinking about money in that way for so many years led me to, after I retired, again, it's so basic, even though everybody think it's very challenging and everybody have their reasons. It really all starts with savings.
Hmm.
So simple, right? It's the answer's right under our nose.
Mhm.
Now, I can only assume being a children's book author is a very different role than yours in the past. Can you
Yes.
can you share a bit about the process of transitioning from a career in investments to becoming a children's book author? And more importantly, I want to hear about these challenges that you faced because I'm sure it was no easy feat.
Yeah. So managing money, and maybe it just comes second nature to me, building out portfolios, determining asset allocations. And really, I always felt like I tried to educate my clients no matter what was happening in the market. Why is that impacting you? Just like we had a pullback a couple of weeks ago in the market, I was like then thinking like, okay, what would I be saying, because I know my clients will be calling. So explaining how things in the that you don't have control of impact you, and educating that standpoint. Writing the children's book, actually, writing the book, the story, for me, it was simple because I know what I wanted to say. The challenge was I don't have children. And how do I say it in a way that, and use different tones that kids can react positively to? And it's like, like when I'll say something, and somebody like, no, a kid wouldn't say it that way. Okay. So just trying to capture the right tone that would keep it interesting, not only for parents but for kids. That was probably the biggest challenge. And then learning the behind the scene, how to get the word out. I really believe, not to toot my own horn, I have a good book. It's a good book, and I think it's something that's needed. So how do you get that out? How do you understanding the business side of it? So those were the challenges, but mainly just making sure that it was something engaging and that kids would find interesting.
Mm. And I know now you're going into schools and having more one-on-one and getting even more great feedback. I'm just kind of wondering, what age group is the book targeted at?
Yeah, I think I say like 6 to 10. Um, in the schools, I'm focusing more on like third to fourth grade. I think 6 year olds are great. I think that's a good start. I think that's where parents have to do more reading and reiterating for the kids.
Mm.
When you get to that 8 to 10, they can read it on their own. They can kind of incorporate things from the book on their own. So anyway, I would say from 6 to 10. Now, depending on the kid, the parent, if you think you have a 12-year-old that could benefit from it, it probably can go up to that age, but definitely that 6 to 10 range.
Now, let's go back and chat more about the importance of early financial education because we definitely want to strive to educate and literate the entire population here. But according to the 2022 PISA study, right, you have about 20% of students, they don't have basic proficiency in financial literacy. And a Greenlight study went even further and reported that nearly three quarters of teenagers, right? These kids are about to go into college.
Yeah.
They don't feel confident in their personal finance knowledge. So, how do you think early financial education can impact the child's future, and how specifically, let's go back, how can my savings jar really pave that way?
Yeah. My hope is to get this in schools. Again, I can't, I know I sound like a broken record, to get started as soon as we can with teaching this. I'm shocked. I always ask, like, how, and I don't know what your ages are, but like when I graduated back in
Mhm.
83 or so, you had to pass a test for the Constitution before you could graduate.
Mhm.
I don't understand how we let kids graduate from high school, going into college when they're 18, just like really on their own for the first time. They're getting credit cards, and no one has had a conversation about how to manage your finance. How do we get them? How do they get out of school without that? So I would love to see this implemented across the country, that's a requirement before you graduate from high school. So from my standpoint, with what I can contribute is writing the book, which I've done on a subject that's needed, and now trying to get it into the schools, into the hands of as many kids as possible, as early as possible.
I totally agree. I'm wondering, were there any particular stories or moments from your career or even your life that directly inspired scenes or lessons in the book?
Well, so I worked in a area called Hinsdale here in Illinois, and it's a very affluent community. And I would see like little kids, mostly girls, having lemonade stands. So within the book, one of the chapters is a lemonade stand, teaching the kid entrepreneurship. That was a way to make money. That that's theirs, and to add that to the savings jar. Also, in my career, one of the topics that reoccurred often with parents is, at what age should they start talking to the kids about money, whether it's uh, a child who would stand to inherit a pretty nice sum of money over time, through trust, or because the parents saved for college through a 529 plan. At what age should they start having that conversation? So that was kind of the key driver for me. My advice to them was always, your child. As a parent, not every child is the same. You may have one child that's very spendthrift. You may have one child that you're like, I don't really think they should have that kind of money at age 18. But I think there's a way, if you start familiarizing them with these terms, and already have it, that they know about savings. They may not know the amounts that they may have, but if they know about saving, they know that they don't spend every dime that they get. If you start that early, then as they get older, at that teenage level, it's already in them. So it doesn't matter. I'll say it shouldn't matter as much the amount that they would be getting. But those are the things, the lemonade stand, seeing the little girls do that, and the conversation around, when is the right time to talk to my kids about money.
Right. And I love that this book seems to be so engaging, introducing this book to them in an engaging way and having examples that they could relate to, like the lemonade stand, is so important because, to your point, young kids are not typically going to choose a book about financial literacy over a book of fairy tales.
Right.
So it's definitely important to keep them engaged and to allow the education system, if you're, albeit getting it in schools or in local libraries or charity drives, that it's the parents that have to take control and the educators. Now, looking into the future, do you plan to write more children's books, perhaps focusing on other aspects of financial literacy?
Yeah, I do. So the first step is savings, right? So even in the book, at the last chapter, the main character, her name is Shaya. After she's reached her goal, she wants to buy a cell phone. I thought that was apropos because most kids around that 10 age want a cell phone. Her mom's like, well, you can't just leave the money in the savings jar. Let's put it in the bank. So then she introduces banking to her. Well, the next step is investing. So my goal is to next year write a book for mostly preteens, teens, about investing. You go to McDonald's, why not own part of McDonald's? You wear Nikes, why not own part of Nikes? You wear an Apple Watch, you use an Apple phone, why not own part of that? And that's the next book, is to get kids to think about, and the parents, and that will be the challenge writing a book, because it has to be geared to the parent and the child, because you can't open up an investment account without the parent. So that would be the next step, just like it is for anyone. Okay, I've saved money, I have excess money. Now what do I do with it? Well, I invest it so that it can grow.
I love what you're saying.
I do too. And I got chills on that one when you talked about that, because I'd love to know too. And that's a book I could fit right into my kid's life.
I know. I'm thinking the same thing. I'm
I'm
like,
like,
wait a minute.
wow, I want to own a piece of Nike and McDonald's. I know we're almost out of time, but I want to know if you gotten any great feedback yet. What are people saying about your book?
Yeah, so I've gotten really good feedback, mostly from parents, because that's who's buying the book. And then I'm like, always like, well, how did your child think about it? And they're always like, oh, they love it. There's a group called Lotus Chicago, some young guys that started this camp and group for kids, and it's like roughly 15 or so kids. So he sent me a picture yesterday of all the kids with the book and reading it. So it's gotten really, really good feedback. And my fear of not having kids and being able to communicate in a tone that kids would appreciate seems like, I got it right. So that's good. But it's been really good feedback.
Well, you're a mama to everyone now, so you're exactly where you're supposed to be with or without kids.
Well,
Nope.
I say that, but I have like plenty of nieces and nephews and cousins that everybody always like, yeah, you don't have your own children, but you've been a mom like 4 years for everybody else in the family.
Wow. Thank you for leading the charge on that good conversation then.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. We are officially out of time, my dear. You are so inspirational, a trailblazer in your field. I love what you're doing. Definitely going to pick up this book for both my daughter and myself and make it a point to read it to her so she can be on that path you're talking about of success.
Well, I appreciate both of you and thank you so much for your time.
Same. Thank you.
That was our Discover Your Potential segment brought to you by Keep the Past, and that was the incredible financial expert and author, Ylanda Wilhite. Definitely be sure to pick up a copy of her book, My Savings Jar, for your kids today on Amazon. Learn more on the gram at My Savings Jar. And of course, you can see more of Anna at discoveryourpotentialshow.com. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.